Welcome back everyone, or just welcome to those of you who are jumping in with this video. Today we are talking about episode 4 of the Percy Jackson series. I honestly can't believe that we are halfway through this season already, and episode 4 is the shortest episode that we've had so far. But without further ado, let's get into it. So right off the bat, this episode starts with a flashback. Of course, we don't get that in the book. So this flashback is of Percy and his mom at a swimming lesson, and Percy is scared of the water, which seems a little weird to me, because maybe if he's being that difficult and he's scared of the water, you could just throw him in. He'll be fine. So despite not getting this in the book, I think it just hits home the fact that Sally deserves the Mother of the Decade award, especially considering that all of the other parents that we've seen or heard about just they're not so good so far. So after the swimming lesson flashback, we go immediately into the trio being on the train. Now in the book, the three of them help a pink poodle, which then gives them money to get as far as Denver, but they don't have enough money to get their own sleeper cabin, which is what we get in the show. And the pink poodle is just non-existent. Another little change is at the beginning of chapter 12 in the book, we get a conversation between Grover and Percy when they're on the train, I believe. But in the show, we get a conversation between Percy and Annabeth, which brings me into my next point. During this conversation, Annabeth talks about her dad. So one thing I thought was interesting when Annabeth mentions her dad is in the book, Annabeth says that her father resented her from the moment she was born. In the show, Annabeth says that her father treated her like a gift, and it was her stepmother that treated her like an inconvenience. With this change, it makes me wonder if Disney thought that maybe Annabeth's original backstory was perhaps a little too harsh for a children's show, despite the fact that Percy fights a monster later on in this episode. So it's interesting, but I wonder if we'll ever get a reason as to why they changed it. But then that small-ish change leads me into the biggest change that we have. So since we start this episode on the train, we also get some questions that come along with it. So in the show, the window in the trio sleeper cabin is broken in and they get detained by the police. And then while they're sitting at a table while the police try and figure out what's happening, we get a lady with a pet carrier that comes to talk to them. At first, you just think that she's being nice and she kind of looks like a concerned suburban mom, but very quickly it's clear that this situation is a little unsettling. Now in the book, they don't meet a lady or hear her chihuahua until they reach the St. Louis Arch. In the show, they see her on the train and Echidna tells the three of them that they should start running. And Annabeth says that the Arch is a temple to Athena and that they'll be safe there. Except Percy apparently pissed Athena off with sending Medusa's head back to Olympus because Athena lets the wards down, which allows Echidna to enter with the Chimera. There's also a little silly scene where Annabeth and Grover are splashing Percy with water from the fountain because they realize that he's been poisoned, but unfortunately the sea god's powers only apply to running water because all that happens is they get some funny looks and Percy does not get any better. And then we have Percy's fight with the Chimera. In the book, Percy is alone when this fight breaks out because he couldn't squeeze into the elevator with Annabeth and Grover. However, in the show, we get Annabeth telling Percy and Grover to leave because Percy's been poisoned by the Chimera's stinger, but Percy tricks Annabeth by offering her riptide, telling her to use it to fight the Chimera, and then he pushes her into the stairwell with Grover and locks the door. It's a perfect scene that I believe furthers their friendship despite not fully trusting each other yet. So the fight in the show is much like the fight in the book, but instead of Percy jumping through the hole in the floor of the St. Louis Arch and into the Mississippi River, because let's be honest, he would not be able to make that jump, what happens is he loses his grip and he hangs from the hole and then he ends up falling, but the water from the Mississippi River comes up and catches him and brings him in. So in the book, we don't get Percy's foot being stuck, and then in the show, a water nymph shows up and tells Percy to breathe because he's kind of panicking, which seems kind of like an echo of the beginning of the show where Sally tells Percy to breathe when she's trying to get him to swim. In my opinion, it was a rather interesting ending to a very short episode. So in the other videos, I did like a little list of a few little things that were changed, but with the bigger things that were changed in this episode, I couldn't really find a lot of little things that really mattered. So I don't have any little things to add on. Now this episode kind of ends in the middle of chapter 14 from the book, so we don't get the water nymph telling Percy that he needs to go to Santa Monica, and we don't get him walking out of the Mississippi River completely dry, or the fact that there's a lot of stuff happening now that there's a hole in the St. Louis Arch and they're looking for the people who did it. But maybe we'll get that in the next episode since we did end with Percy still underwater. So that is it for episode 4. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will hopefully have the video for episode 5 out soon, but I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.